How do you break out of your comfort zone so you can take the right action? The CEO of Kindston Lane and a sought-after keynote speaker, Srivatsa. Sharran has taken his company Teles Properties to $3.4 billion in 5 years. Today, Dan Locke interviews Sharran on the science of breaking out of your comfort zone.
Credentials wife took a company from 300 million to over $3.4 billion in less than 5 years.
Yeah.
How many people on the planet have done that? So I'm very, very excited. Welcome to the show, Sharran. I appreciate it. Share with us a little bit about your background for my audience who doesn't know you.
You will love the story. I may not even share this with you. So the first job that I got, I was really embarrassed to have a job because I came from a decent middle class family. And the only job I could get was the janitorial job. So I was mopping floors, and I didn't want my classmates to see me mopping floors. So I took the midnight to 6 a.m. shift. And I'm mopping floors, and this older janitor tells me, Sharran, your English is not that great. I suggest you go get some language tapes. Language tapes. Yeah. So I go to the library, I ask for language tapes. She says, well, I have Mandarin, I have German, I have Japanese, but I don't have English. But she hands me an audiobook. Okay. She's like, try the audiobook. This will at least get you going. Well, the audiobook was Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins.
Oh, wow.
So the only way I know how to speak is yelling and screaming because I heard Tony mopping floors 6 hours a day. So my introduction, learning English was from Tony Robbins.
But still, that exposed you to the personal development, self-growth world, right?
Right. It was not all rosy. I remember my early days, and as international students, I showed up on day one. I went to financial services. I handed them my one check that my father gave me. I was so proud. And she hands me my dorm room key. She's like, Sharran, welcome. And then she tells me, hey, it's an international check. It's going to take 10 to 14 days to clear. So come back and see me in 14 days. So I had no money for 14 days. I didn't have money to buy food for 14 days. I remember this day vividly. 2 days in, I had not eaten for a while, and I was walking down campus. I saw this dumpster, and I saw a couple people throw a couple of pizza boxes into this dumpster. I mustered the courage. I jumped in. I grabbed the pizza boxes, and I ran to my room. And I was like, wow, I made it. This is good. I had a couple slices of pizza. The next day, I was still hungry. And this is a true story. It was late at night, and I saw two guys throw Subway sandwiches into this dumpster. I said, today's a bonanza. This is amazing. This is better than yesterday. Yes. Then I jump in. I grab the Subway sandwiches. I grab a box of Pop-Tarts. And then suddenly something whacks me in the face, and I start bleeding. There was a raccoon.
Oh, wow.
In the dumpster with me, like an 8x10 dumpster. And fight or flight kicks in.
Yes.
I grab the box of Pop-Tarts, I grab the Subway sandwiches, I kick the raccoon, and I run. I just jump out and I run. And that's when I realized, if this is rock bottom, if this is the baseline, I can take a lot of risk in my life. And a lot of times I think we all, I just talked about this before the show came on, is that we work in this band of safety. And knowing that I can expand the band, knowing that I can take more risk, allows us to do more, be more.
And sometimes I say to people, when you hit rock bottom, well, you can't fall any, you can't do any worse. You already hit rock bottom,
right?
Like it's like sometimes I notice people. They say they're struggling financially, right? Say, oh, I've got no money. I've got only a few $100, $1,000. I don't want to invest in myself. I don't want to make a change. I'm like, you already hit rock bottom. What difference does it make? Seriously, what difference does it make? Right?
Yeah.
Like invest the $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is. Buy that book. You can't fall under this. So it's something very interesting. So what was the turning point? From that point on, how did you get into business?
So what I didn't have was, all I knew I had was this ticket, this one check for the 1 year of school. I had to come up with 3 more years of university. And so I needed to do something. And the funniest story was, I walk into my dorm room on day one, and this was old school. We didn't have Wi-Fi back then. They just wired the dorm rooms. And I realized that the plug to the internet and the bed, and the desk, was 13 feet long. So I said, everybody in these dorm rooms are gonna need 13-foot long cables. So I drove to Minnesota, I bought as much cable as my roommate's credit card would actually do.
Other people's money.
Other people's money.
OPM.
Zero money, zero investment.
I love it.
We bought so much cable that I didn't have clothes. I put all the cable in my closet.
Yeah.
We sold cable at $3 a foot. We made $57,000 in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that, even before school started, that paid for the school for next year. So me and my roommate split 50-50. His parents were like, why did you charge $20,000 on this credit card? And we paid it all back. But we made $57,000 in 3 weeks. And that was the beginning of, oh my goodness, we have
closing and entrepreneurship.
We could, if I can sell Ethernet cable, I could do anything.
So you saw it in the marketplace. You just went for it. Combine that with some skill, some closing skill. Maybe not even much closing skill. It's just, hey, you want to buy this, right?
Yeah.
And then boom, right?
Yeah.
But you made money out of thin air.
Yes.
It's simply an idea into that, right? So what was it like? Like it's kind of the first taste of entrepreneurship, or were you just thinking of I can make some money doing this to like accumulate some tuition money?
I was thinking as the first. I thought I'd give myself a year to make money, but as soon as I made that upfront, it just gave me this bug that, wow, I didn't even, not that I didn't work hard, I worked hard on the idea. I recognized, I think you've talked about this a lot, it's not about making the best burger, but having the hungry crowd, right?
Yes.
If you can have the hungry crowd, I just found the hungry crowd, and that became everything. I got excited about creating something from nothing, and that was just.
Did you finish the entire university, or did you like?
I stayed. I finished all the way through because I thought it was a responsibility to my parents.
Yes. And in between, did you start other things, trying to do other things to make money?
I had a lot of jobs in between in school. I didn't do paper routes. I actually had a network of other people doing paper routes so that I would get paid.
Yes.
So I did a lot of jobs. But
entrepreneurial activities, right? Yeah.
Totally. And then I started my first software company out of my dorm room. And during the technology boom, I was able to take my software and go to another software company in the Silicon Valley. And then we grew that, and that was our first exit, and we sold that during the technology boom.
I see. And in between, as an entrepreneur, what are some of the lessons you've learned? We were talking about scale, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that. How do you view scale? How do you view growing a company very rapidly?
Yeah, I think we've been doing this all very naturally, but the hardest part for me has been, just like you've been very humble to say, hey, I started 11, 12 ventures and they didn't go very well. And you've been so gracious to talk about that. I had many of those, and I think the only ones that didn't succeed were the ones that didn't have a promise. Like I promised that, the promise is when you buy X, you get Y.
Yes.
And now people are trading you for the promise, so now you can just scale Y. I think a lot of times what people think is,
it's on the product. This is what this is.
Right.
Versus what is it going to do for me? Right?
Exactly. And I think as soon as I started figuring out the promise, things started really. So the biggest thing now I tell my team is there are two things that we always do before we start any initiative. What is the promise?
Yes.
And then what are the non-negotiables?
Yes.
People always think, well, what is the offer? What is the benefit? What is, like, all that's secondary.
Yes.
Like, what is the promise? The promise is it's going to save Dan or an engineer or a salesperson.
Like a one-liner.
Yeah, it's going to save you 30 hours a week. That's an amazing promise. And now you're buying the promise. You're not buying that product.
Yeah.
And so I have to deliver on that promise. Anytime, the hardest part was coming up with the promise. And I think in everything that I've done, the hardest part was, hey, what is the promise? So, we recently had our real estate company that we grew.
Yes.
And I'll give you the promise. The promise was whenever I talk to anybody, I would say a real estate agent who would come work with us.
Yeah.
I would say, if you take 7 or more listings a year, our platform can save you 1 day a week. What would you do with an extra 52 days a year? So my promise was delivering them back
The time.
52 days a year.
Yeah.
And everything that we invested in, created,
Yeah.
was centered around delivering that promise.